Before you decide what kind of life you want, pause for a moment and look at the life you are currently living. Not the life you talk about, not the life you plan for someday, but the life your daily choices are quietly building right now. Because whether you realize it or not, you are already in the process of becoming something. Every habit you repeat, every excuse you accept, every standard you tolerate is shaping the person you will meet in the future. There comes a time when a person must ask a serious question, not out of desperation, but out of honesty. Is the way I am living today strong enough to support the future I want tomorrow? For many, that question arrives after a setback, a failure, or a moment of deep reflection. For others, it arrives quietly, in the space between comfort and dissatisfaction. Rebuilding yourself does not mean you are broken. It means you are aware. It means you recognize that potential unused is opportunity wasted. Life will not pause while you decide. Time will continue to pass. Results will continue to accumulate, and the only variable is the person you choose to be from this moment forward. This is not a speech about starting over. It is a conversation about starting stronger. Personal responsibility is the foundation of rebuilding yourself, because nothing meaningful changes until you accept that your life is primarily shaped by your own choices. This idea can feel uncomfortable at first because it removes the comfort of blaming circumstances, people, or past events. Yet, it is precisely this discomfort that makes personal responsibility so powerful. When you stop pointing outward and start looking inward, you regain control. You may not have chosen everything that happened to you, but you are always choosing how you respond, what you tolerate, and what you pursue. The moment you understand this, you move from being a passive participant in your life to an active creator of it. Taking responsibility does not mean condemning yourself or dwelling on mistakes. It means recognizing that every result you experience, your finances, your health, your relationship, your mindset is connected to patterns of behavior and decisions, whether conscious or unconscious. This awareness shifts your focus from complaining to correcting. Instead of asking, why does this always happen to me? You begin to ask, what am I doing that produces this result? That question alone opens the door to growth, because it places the solution within your reach rather than outside of it. When people avoid responsibility, they often remain stuck in cycles of frustration. Blame becomes a habit, and habits eventually harden into identity. Over time, this mindset drains ambition and replaces effort with excuses. Personal responsibility interrupts this cycle. It restores dignity. It reminds you that you are not helpless, even in difficult conditions. Responsibility does not deny challenges. It simply refuses to surrender to them. It acknowledges obstacles while still insisting on progress. Rebuilding yourself requires ownership of both past actions and present direction. You cannot redesign your future while pretending your current position is someone else's fault. Responsibility sharpens your decision-making because you begin to understand that every choice carries weight. What you do with your time, who you listen to, what you consume mentally, and what standards you accept all contribute to who you are becoming. Once you accept this, you become more deliberate. Life stops being something that happens to you and starts becoming something you manage. Personal responsibility also strengthens character. It builds self-respect because you know that your results are earned, not accidental. Each improvement, no matter how small, becomes proof that change is possible through effort. This confidence compounds over time. You begin to trust yourself more because you see evidence that your actions matter. Responsibility creates momentum, and momentum creates belief. Most importantly, personal responsibility gives you freedom. As long as you believe your life is controlled by forces outside you, you are trapped. When you accept responsibility, you may feel the weight of it at first, but that weight is paired with power. Power to choose differently, power to improve, power to rebuild. Self-awareness is the starting point of rebuilding yourself, because improvement is impossible without clarity. You cannot change what you do not recognize. And many people move through life reacting automatically, driven by habits and emotions they have never examined. When you lack self-awareness, you repeat the same patterns while hoping for different results. This creates frustration, not because growth is unavailable, but because understanding has been avoided. Awareness brings your internal world into focus and allows you to see how your thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors quietly shape your outcomes. To become self-aware, you must be willing to observe yourself honestly, without exaggeration or denial. This means noticing how you respond under pressure, how you speak to others, and how you speak to yourself when no one is listening. Many limitations are not caused by lack of ability, but by unchallenged beliefs that operate in the background. Self-awareness exposes these beliefs. It shows you where fear disguises itself as logic, where comfort disguises itself as contentment, and where excuses disguise themselves as explanation. This process requires humility because self-awareness often reveals gaps between who you believe you are and how you actually behave. That gap can feel uncomfortable, but it is also where growth lies. Without awareness, effort is misdirected. People try to fix their circumstances while ignoring the attitudes that created them. When you understand your patterns, you stop fighting symptoms and begin addressing causes. You realize that your reactions are often more influential than the situations themselves. Self-awareness also improves decision-making. When you understand your tendencies, strengths, and weaknesses, you are less likely to sabotage yourself. You recognize situations that trigger poor choices and learn to pause instead of reacting. This pause is powerful. It creates space between impulse and action, allowing intention to replace habit. Over time, this awareness reshapes your behavior naturally, without force, because you are acting from understanding rather than guilt or pressure. Rebuilding yourself requires this level of clarity, because growth is not about becoming someone else. It is about refining who you already are. Self-awareness helps you identify what to develop and what to release. It shows you which environments help you thrive and which ones quietly pull you backward. It reveals how much of your potential is tied to focus, consistency, and emotional control rather than talent. As awareness deepens, accountability becomes easier. You stop needing constant motivation because you understand the cost of remaining the same. You become more patient with yourself, while also becoming more demanding of your standards. This balance is essential. Without awareness, discipline feels like punishment. With awareness, discipline feels like alignment. You are no longer guessing what needs to change. You see it clearly, and clarity makes action simpler. Discipline is the bridge between intention and transformation, and without it, rebuilding yourself remains an idea rather than a reality. Many people wait for motivation to act, believing they need to feel ready before they begin. Discipline works in the opposite direction. It acts first and allows feelings to follow. When you rely on discipline, you are no longer controlled by mood, energy, or circumstance. You act because you have decided, not because it feels convenient. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction or suffering, but in truth, it is a form of self-respect. It is the ability to honor commitments you make to yourself, even when no one is watching. Every time you follow through on a small promise, you strengthen trust in your own word. This trust is essential for rebuilding because without it, confidence collapses. You may have ability, intelligence, or ambition, but without discipline, those qualities remain inconsistent and unreliable. Transformation has a cost, and discipline is the currency. There is always a price to pay, whether it is the discomfort of effort or the regret of stagnation. Discipline simply teaches you to choose the cost that benefits you in the long run. It trains you to endure short-term discomfort in exchange for long-term improvement. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes natural, and what once felt impossible becomes routine. Discipline also simplifies life. When your standards are clear, decisions become easier. You waste less time negotiating with yourself, debating whether you should act or delay. This mental clarity frees energy for progress. Instead of constantly restarting, you build momentum. Momentum is powerful because it reduces resistance and makes consistency more achievable. Rebuilding yourself requires patience, and discipline provides that patience with structure. Progress rarely announces itself. Most growth happens quietly, in repeated actions that seem insignificant in isolation. Discipline keeps you moving forward when results are not yet visible. It allows you to trust the process rather than abandon it prematurely. Without discipline, people often quit at the exact moment progress is forming beneath the surface. Discipline also strengthens emotional control. It teaches you to act based on values rather than impulses. Emotions fluctuate, but values provide stability. When you live by discipline, you are less reactive and more intentional. You respond thoughtfully instead of reacting emotionally, which leads to better outcomes in every area of life. As discipline becomes part of your identity, rebuilding yourself no longer feels like a struggle. It becomes a lifestyle. You stop asking whether you feel like doing what is necessary and start doing what aligns with the future you want. Discipline does not limit your freedom. It creates it by removing chaos, inconsistency, and regret from your daily life. Habits are an invisible structure of daily life, quietly shaping who you become over time. Most people think their future is determined by big decisions, but in reality, it is formed by small actions repeated consistently. What you do each day may seem insignificant in the moment, yet those repeated behaviors accumulate and eventually define your results. Rebuilding yourself requires understanding that lasting change does not come from dramatic effort, but from reshaping the routines that guide your behavior when willpower is absent. Habits operate automatically, which is why they are so powerful. Once established, they require little conscious effort, allowing you to function efficiently. The problem is that habits do not discriminate between what helps you and what harms you. Poor habits compound just as reliably as good ones. A lack of discipline, neglected learning, or careless use of time may feel harmless today, but over time these patterns produce predictable outcomes. Habits are patient, and they wait until the results can no longer be ignored. When you decide to rebuild yourself, the most effective place to begin is with your daily habits. Goals may set direction, but habits determine whether you arrive. You can have the best intentions in the world, but if your habits contradict your goals, your habits will win. This is why change often fails at the level of consistency. People aim high but live low, repeating routines that reinforce the very life they want to escape. Habits shape not only your actions, but your identity. Over time, repeated behaviors turn into self-belief. If you consistently follow through, you begin to see yourself as reliable. If you consistently avoid effort, you begin to see yourself as incapable or unlucky. These identities influence future behavior, creating a self-reinforcing cycle. Rebuilding yourself means consciously choosing habits that support the person you want to become, even before you fully believe you are that person. Changing habits requires awareness and patience. You do not eliminate a habit by resisting it occasionally. You replace it with a better one practiced consistently. The focus should be on progress, not perfection. Small improvements sustained over time reshape your life more effectively than extreme changes that cannot be maintained. A habit practiced daily carries more power than a burst of motivation followed by inconsistency. Habits also reduce reliance on willpower. Willpower is limited and unreliable, but habits operate regardless of mood or emotion. When positive habits are in place, progress becomes easier because action no longer feels like a struggle. Over time, effort turns into routine, and routine turns into results. Rebuilding yourself is not about reinventing everything at once. It is about choosing a few key habits that align with growth and committing to them daily. As these habits compound, they quietly reshape your mindset, your confidence, and your future. Growth demands change, and change often requires letting go of what once felt familiar or comfortable. Many people attempt to rebuild themselves while holding tightly to old beliefs, behaviors, and environments that no longer support who they want to become. This creates inner conflict. You cannot move forward while clinging to patterns that pull you backward. Letting go is not a loss of identity. It is an act of alignment with a higher standard for your life. One of the hardest things to release is outdated belief systems. Beliefs formed from past failures, criticism, or limited experiences often continue to shape decisions long after their relevance has expired. These beliefs quietly set boundaries on what you think is possible. Rebuilding yourself requires questioning these mental limits and recognizing that many of them were adopted unconsciously. Letting go of these beliefs does not mean denying your past. It means refusing to let the past dictate your future. Letting go also applies to behaviors that provide short-term comfort but long-term stagnation. Comfort is seductive because it feels safe. But safety without progress eventually turns into regret. Habits that once helped you cope may now be preventing you from growing. Rebuilding requires the courage to release behaviors that no longer serve your goals, even when they feel familiar or emotionally reassuring. Relationships play a powerful role in personal growth. The people you spend time with influence your mindset, standards, and expectations. Some relationships encourage growth, while others reinforce limitation. Letting go does not always mean cutting people off completely. Sometimes it means creating distance, redefining boundaries, or refusing to participate in patterns that undermine your development. This process can feel uncomfortable because it challenges loyalty and familiarity, but growth often demands difficult choices. Emotional attachment to past versions of yourself can also hinder rebuilding. You may hold on to an identity built around struggle, victimhood, or past success. While these identities once served a purpose, they can become cages if left unexamined. Letting go allows space for evolution. It acknowledges that growth requires change and change requires release. Rebuilding yourself is not about rejecting who you were, it is about honoring who you are becoming. Letting go creates room for new habits, stronger beliefs, and healthier environments to take root. Without release, there is no space for renewal. Growth thrives where attachment loosens and clarity emerges when you stop carrying what no longer belongs to your future. Consistency is what turns effort into identity and intention into reality. Many people believe change happens through sudden breakthroughs or intense bursts of motivation, but those moments are rare and often unsustainable. Real rebuilding happens through steady, repeated action carried out over time. Consistency may not feel exciting, but it is dependable, and dependability is what creates lasting transformation. Intensity relies heavily on emotion. When enthusiasm is high, effort feels easy, but when energy drops, progress often stops. This cycle leads to frequent restarts and frustration. Consistency operates independently of mood. It is rooted in commitment rather than feeling. When you show up regularly, even at a lower intensity, you build rhythm. Rhythm reduces resistance and makes action feel natural rather than forced. Small actions performed consistently carry more power than large actions performed occasionally. A few minutes of focused effort each day will outperform hours of sporadic work over time. This is because repetition compounds. Each consistent action builds on the previous one, strengthening skills, habits, and confidence. Progress may be slow at first, but it becomes more noticeable as momentum develops. Consistency also protects you from overwhelm. When goals feel too large, people often delay starting or quit early. Consistent action breaks large goals into manageable steps. Each step reinforces the belief that progress is possible. Over time, this belief becomes self-sustaining. You no longer need to convince yourself to act. Action becomes part of who you are. Rebuilding yourself requires patience, and consistency trains patience through practice. Results rarely appear immediately, and without consistency, people abandon their efforts before change has time to take root. Showing up regularly teaches you to trust the process rather than chase quick results. This trust creates emotional stability and reduces self-doubt. Consistency also strengthens discipline without exhausting it. High intensity demands constant emotional fuel, while consistency relies on structure. When your actions are structured, you conserve mental energy and avoid burnout. This allows growth to continue even during periods of stress or low motivation. Over time, consistency reshapes your self-image. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone reliable, someone capable of change. This shift in identity is powerful because behavior aligns naturally with belief. Rebuilding yourself is not about heroic effort. It is about repeated commitment. When you choose consistency, improvement becomes inevitable, not because you are pushing harder, but because you are refusing to stop. As we come to the end of this message, remember that rebuilding yourself is not a single decision, but a lifelong commitment to growth. It begins with responsibility, deepens through awareness, and is sustained by discipline, habits, and consistency. Every improvement you make, no matter how small, strengthens the foundation of the person you are becoming. The past does not disqualify you, and your current position does not define your limits. What matters most is the direction you choose and the standards you are willing to live by each day. When you commit to rebuilding yourself, you are choosing progress over comfort, intention over habit, and purpose over excuses. That choice, repeated daily, has the power to reshape your life in ways you cannot yet imagine. I wish you clarity in your decisions, strength in your discipline, and patience in your journey. May you continue to grow, learn, and rise beyond the version of yourself you once thought was enough. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your willingness to invest in becoming better. Good luck, and may your efforts today create a future you are proud to live.